In the autumn of 1968, while the world was gripped by social upheaval and the space race was reaching its zenith, a peculiar sound emerged from a New York recording studio. The maestro behind this sonic revolution was a left-handed guitarist with wild hair and an even wilder imagination, who had spent nearly 8 months crafting what would become his magnum opus. Jimi Hendrix, the shy boy from Seattle, who had transformed into rock's most innovative wizard, was about to unleash electric Ladyland upon an unsuspecting world. The journey to this groundbreaking double album had begun in London's smoke-filled clubs, where Hendrix had first dazzled British audiences with his guitar pyrotechnics. But by 1968, he had grown restless with the simple structures of rock and roll. Like an alchemist experimenting with rare elements, Hendrix took control of every aspect of the recording process, often spending entire days perfecting a single guitar riff. His perfectionism drove his bandmates to the brink of exhaustion, and even his most patient engineers found themselves dozing off during his marathon recording sessions. The record plant studio became Hendrix's laboratory, where he mixed blues, jazz, and psychedelic rock into a potion of his own making. Musicians would drift in and out at all hours, contributing to his grand vision, though many of their contributions would end up on the cutting room floor if they didn't match the exact sound Hendrix heard in his head. The studio bills mounted as rapidly as the reels of tape, making his record label executives nervously tug at their collars. But Hendrix, like a mad scientist on the verge of a breakthrough, refused to be rushed. What emerged from those sessions was unlike anything the world had heard before. Electric Ladyland wasn't just an album. It was a complete reimagining of what electric guitars could do. Every track was layered with sounds that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Guitars that sounded like orchestras, effects that mimicked cosmic explosions, and rhythms that seemed to bend time itself. The record company executives, who had been pulling their hair out over the mounting costs, found their jaws dropping when they heard the final product. October 25th marked the moment when this sonic experiment was finally released into the wild. The album's elaborate packaging, complete with its controversial original UK cover art, caused as much stir as the music itself. Critics scrambled to find words to describe what they were hearing, while fellow musicians listened in awe, knowing they were witnessing a turning point in rock history. What they didn't know was that this would be the last studio album Hendrix would release in his lifetime, a final testament to his uncompromising artistic vision and boundless creativity.
A storm was brewing in the music world, though few knew it. On October 27, 2006, Amy Winehouse, London's razor-sharp rebel with a voice drenched in soulful sadness, released Back to Black, her second studio album. By the time the record hit shelves, it wasn't merely another album on the rack. It was an unapologetic anthem, both a scream of defiance and a whisper of vulnerability. Winehouse wasn't looking to please the mainstream. She was looking to unravel herself, and she did so spectacularly. With every track, she poured out heartbreak, love, anger, and regret, etching her name indelibly in music history. The mid-2000s were a time when pop music gleamed with auto-tuned polish and pristine studio production. Stars of the era perfected images, glossy, carefully managed personas designed to top the charts. But then there was Amy, bold and brazen, a woman who didn't mince her words or sugarcoat her flaws. The moment her dark beehive and heavy-winged eyeliner appeared, She stood out in the crowd of pop idols. Back to Black challenged what was expected of women in the industry. Her voice held rawness and honesty, backed by an unflinching embrace of jazz, soul, and Motown-inspired sounds that resurrected the old-school charm of 60s girl groups, music that once captivated her parents' generation. Behind the creation of Back to Black was a whirlwind romance, a troubled relationship that Winehouse distilled into lyrics with an almost surgical precision. She partnered with producer Mark Ronson, whose retro-style production felt as if it had been marinated in an analog warmth, giving Amy's confessions even more depth. Together, they crafted songs that weren't just for singing along. They demanded the listener's attention, revealing stories of unrequited love, self-doubt, and the dark spiral of addiction. Every line of Back to Black held something deeper, a tale of bittersweet love, and the haunting emptiness it left behind. The album quickly climbed the charts in the UK and beyond, redefining modern soul music and carving a new path for future artists who wanted to bring authenticity and edge to the mainstream. Back to Black earned Winehouse 5 Grammy Awards and firmly planted her as the voice of a generation unafraid to bear its scars. Yet, for Amy, the album's success came at a cost. She became a reluctant icon, a public figure thrust into an unforgiving spotlight that seemed more focused on her flaws than her talent. Fame was a double-edged sword, and while Back to Black soared, Amy's struggles grew more visible. Back to Black was more than an album. It was a farewell, both for her fans and, in some ways, for Amy herself. It resonated with listeners worldwide who felt lost, heartbroken, or simply misunderstood. Every note, every raw confession reminded the world of music's power to expose truths, even the most painful ones. As her final studio release, Back to Black stands as a lasting testament to Amy Winehouse's profound, rebellious spirit, a woman whose art and soul will echo through history long after the music fades.
As the leaves turned crisp and the days grew shorter in 1994, something unusual was stirring in the music world. Pop diva Mariah Carey, known for her powerhouse vocals and chart-topping hits, was about to make an unconventional move. Rather than release another standard pop album, Mariah decided to dive into a genre that few expected from a rising star in her prime, a holiday album. But Merry Christmas was more than a seasonal treat. It would soon prove to be a cultural phenomenon that marked a bold moment in music history. This wasn't just any festive album. Mariah had a vision, and soon the world would be singing along. Back in the early 90s, pop artists rarely took holiday albums seriously. They were often seen as safe, sentimental ventures, often left for artists whose careers were on the decline. But Mariah, ever the risk-taker, had something bigger in mind. Her label, Columbia Records, was unsure about the timing. Releasing a holiday album as her fourth major project seemed risky, especially with her fame skyrocketing and fans eagerly awaiting more pop hits. Yet Mariah, true to form, believed that this was the perfect moment. She saw it not only as a chance to showcase her versatility, but as a celebration of joy, community, and music that transcends genres. And so, with a mix of classic carols and original tracks, she crafted an album that would come to define Christmas for generations. The heart of Merry Christmas lies in its timeless approach. Mariah didn't just record jingles, she infused each track with her signature style, blending pop, gospel, and R&B into something that felt both fresh and familiar. This wasn't simply a holiday project for her. Mariah wanted it to feel like home, warmth, and a bit of that old-fashioned Christmas magic. Songs like All I Want for Christmas Is You weren't just festive tunes. They were declarations of joy wrapped in melodies so catchy they could make even the most stubborn Scrooge feel a bit more cheerful. Little did she know, one song in particular was about to become a cultural staple, one of the most streamed holiday tracks of all time. As recording sessions unfolded, Mariah poured herself into each song, knowing that capturing that elusive Christmas spirit wasn't easy. Working alongside Walter Afanasieff, her trusted producer and friend, she experimented with new sounds, layering rich harmonies and creating a lush atmosphere that felt as grand as the holiday season itself. Afanasieff's expertise and Mariah's meticulous attention to detail brought the album to life in a way that was both technically masterful and genuinely heartfelt. Together, they didn't just make a Christmas album, they built a whole universe. One where listeners felt wrapped in nostalgia and the timelessness of December. When Merry Christmas hit the shelves on October 28, 1994, the response was electric. Fans and critics alike marveled at Mariah's transformation from pop princess to the undisputed Queen of Christmas. Almost instantly, Merry Christmas became a holiday essential, and All I Want for Christmas Is You reached beyond radio, finding a place in malls, coffee shops, and homes worldwide. With this album, Mariah had pulled off what few dared to attempt. She'd created not just an album, but an experience that captured the spirit of Christmas with a voice and style all her own. And in doing so, she ensured that every December, people everywhere would be singing along.
In the twilight of the 20th century, something curious was unfolding in the music world. Bands were shifting their sounds, and fans were caught in a tug-of-war between the familiar and the strange. Enter U2, a band that had spent nearly 2 decades redefining itself with every album, with Bono, The Edge, Adam Clayton, and Larry Mullen Jr. constantly tinkering with the edge of rock, pop, and a hint of electronica. The year was 2000, and the band had returned from their bold 90s experimentations. This time, they aimed to release an album that would touch people's hearts in ways only U2 could, but in a style that seemed as if they'd uncovered something they thought they'd lost. Now, while the world teetered on the edge of a new millennium, filled with Y2K fears and the rise of the internet, U2 was contemplating something just as seismic. They had just come off their Pop Mart tour, huge, neon-lit, and louder than anything they'd done before. But beneath all the grandeur, they sensed a disconnection with their audience, a longing for intimacy and authenticity that the glitz and glamour couldn't quite reach. All That You Can't Leave Behind wasn't just an album title, it was a statement, a promise. They were diving back into the heart of their own music, searching for the songs that reminded them why they'd started playing in the first place. The album became a blend of the new and the nostalgic, with the band revisiting their signature sound, the rawness of the Joshua Tree years, but with a wisdom that only time could bring. They didn't entirely abandon the experimentation of the 90s, but they filtered it through a more refined, almost timeless lens. Beautiful Day and Walk On became the anthems that echoed around the world, embracing themes of resilience, renewal, and hope. The Edge's guitar shimmered as it once had, but now it resonated with a depth born of experience. Behind the scenes, this album held a personal weight. Bono had always been one to carry the world's troubles on his shoulders, and this album felt like a call to action for a world that was growing increasingly complex. They wanted to reconnect people, and if possible, uplift them. This time, U2's message wasn't about rebellion or critique, it was about hope. They wanted listeners to walk away feeling as if they too had something they couldn't bear to leave behind, something worth fighting for. With All That You Can't Leave Behind, U2 invited the world to stand in their shoes and take a look around. It wasn't just another record. It was an invitation to pause, to reflect, and maybe to come together in ways we hadn't before. As they stepped onto the world stage yet again, it was clear U2 had not only made an album, they'd rekindled the very essence of why people fall in love with music in the first place. This wasn't just a record to sell. It was a soundtrack for those yearning to find their own path forward. In the bustling heart of the music world, October 30th, 2001, marked a moment like no other. This day, Michael Jackson, the undisputed king of pop, launched his final studio album, Invincible. Despite his towering status in music and the anticipation among millions, the album's arrival was tangled in a series of controversies, hardships, and the pressure of legacy. For Jackson, this wasn't just another record release. It was an act of resilience, a statement of survival. Years had passed since his last album, History, in 1995, and with Invincible, he wanted to reassert his place in a music scene transformed by pop newcomers and shifting tastes. The journey to Invincible had not been easy. Michael's relationship with Sony Music, his longtime label, had frayed. Financial disputes, creative clashes, and an unshakable sense of betrayal loomed over the project. Jackson felt the corporate world tightening its grip, demanding hits, profits, and marketability over his artistry. In a fiery twist, he accused Sony of not promoting Invincible adequately, even suggesting that racial prejudice might be at play. While Sony denied the accusations, the tension was unmistakable. Behind the scenes, it was a chess game where every move held weight, each decision a test of loyalty, legacy, and survival. Invincible was also born in a time when music itself was evolving. The early 2000s marked the rise of digital downloads, which would soon shift the entire industry landscape. Pop was reinventing itself, with young stars like Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, and a new wave of hip-hop artists. To Michael, it wasn't just a competition, it was an invitation to innovate. Yet, as he experimented with fresher sounds and collaborated with young producers, he kept his signature style alive. He was chasing something timeless, trying to balance his core essence with the pulse of the 2000s. Despite the upheaval, Invincible showcased Michael's legendary touch. Songs like You Rock My World and Butterflies revealed a new depth in his voice, blending vulnerability with strength, love with defiance. The album's ballads were raw, revealing an artist at his most introspective, even lonely. Although Invincible didn't receive the critical acclaim or sales that defined his earlier works, it became a testament to his undying spirit. He poured himself into every note, every lyric, capturing a sense of defiance, longing, and a desire to be seen, not as a superstar, but as a human being behind the mask of fame. As Invincible was released to the world, it stood as a complex chapter in Michael Jackson's story, one filled with joy, heartbreak, and transformation. It wasn't just the music that told a story, but the context surrounding it, the tension with Sony, the changing world of pop, and Michael's own struggles with fame and self-expression. In the end, Invincible became a mirror, reflecting an artist in transition, defying odds, yet yearning to be remembered not only for the glitz, but for the genuine soul behind the spectacle. The King of Pop had delivered his final bow, leaving a legacy that echoed far beyond the album's cover, right into the hearts of those who understood the price of true artistry.